So, in honor of what I've learned from Ember, I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about, in my personal opinion, steps that everyone can and should take on this issue. And I want to come up with a solutions-oriented approach. And I'm going to write it out, I'm going to describe it, and let's talk about it. And here's how I personally feel. I think it is time to implement something akin to stop censoring games. Okay. I do think in the adult games community, this idea is relatively popular, that this might work. This might be a solution. And I personally think that something like this should come about. I'm not saying that this is something I'm going to start, that I'm going to do. I'm not saying that this is something that I want to lead. I'm just saying that I think this is something that should exist. And I'm just going to paint some ideas of what I think could work. Because I think this could work. I think what's really important is having something like SKG in terms of larger artistic expression. Please forgive my chicken scratch, my hen scratch, if you will, because I'm female. On the question of larger impact of payment processor censorship and looking beyond 18 plus, because it is a free speech issue. Okay? So this is how I feel. I personally think that there should be an awareness movement, and I'll talk a little bit about like concrete steps that I think will be good. And I'm going to highlight this specific portion and post it on Twitter when we're done. I personally think that Stop Killing Games has been very successful because it set out a clear goal, awareness of the larger issue of games as a service model, as in you are basically, buying a subscription to a game. You're not physically owning it. How that is so anti-consumer, and how something needs to be done to change that and to bring people together under the umbrella and the banner of that. And also when you had someone very big make a fool of themselves over the issue of, Stop Killing Games, people were further brought to the idea that, yes, why should I be buying, something that basically says I have the license to play something until a random program stops functioning, right? I should physically own something the same way I physically own a book, the same way that I used to physically own cartridges in the 90s and the 2000s. Physically own DVDs and CDs and all that shit. And I think in the same way, I think Stop Censoring Games or something like it would be, I think something like this initiative needs to come out to basically tell people, look, the question of what payment processors are doing, this is a serious issue. It's going to affect more than just adult content, because it will eventually affect things beyond the adult realm. That it's a fundamental issue of, gamers having their ability to buy and play what they wish without an outside company coming in on moral grounds. It's threatening that. It's basically saying someone else should at any given time come in and be in a moral authority on what you can and can't play. They should be mom and dad. They should be the church. They should be, they should be your teacher, whatever. Someone can come in and claim moral authority in a way that's inappropriate. And that this is ultimately an issue of the right to free expression in society. The right to creators expressing themselves and you as a customer being able to vote with your wallet. I think that framing this issue in that way and a general awareness campaign that payment processors are increasingly controlling free speech in the world would be really good. I think what that would end up doing is broadening this issue and get people to care that are a little squicked out about the specific things being censored, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you stop the payment processor from censoring any content period, then all of the more taboo material will have to be allowed to be processed. So at the end of the day, the main goal is to get people to care about this. And that means you might not necessarily mention the word incest, but you will mention the word free speech issue or access to controversial games or whether you can buy, RimWorld or whatever. I think those are all really important things to frame and to mention and talk about. So I think the idea of a general movement around preventing payment processors from further censoring artistic expression and general content in gaming is really important, because I do believe this issue is going to get worse. So I think some kind of movement similar to Stop Killing Games that's a general awareness vibe would be really good. To be a degenerate and proud, you have to be willing to bust some heads. Oh no, Microsoft Paint. We're doing Microsoft Paint, Anna, right here, right now. Okay, I'm not saying this shouldn't happen, but this will need work on how to market it. Reason being, the stop censoring games is already a thing with right-wing gamers when they get mad at dumb shit like how female characters are looking in games. Still with Blade, Horizon, other Sony games, etc. No, absolutely. 1993. This is almost my birth year, by the way. Like my real IRL birth year. Don't get me wrong. What I'm trying to do here is throw out an idea. It's not like an initiative I want to start. It's not something that I want to lead. I don't want to be a leader of anything. I'm just throwing out a potential idea, right? So maybe it's called something else. Maybe it's stop prohibiting games. I don't know. I think censoring though speaks to people. We need a marketing team. It's more I'm trying to throw out. I'm waiting to celebrate my burp here. That's actually so based on. It's more to throw out the general idea that there needs to be an initiative similar to Stop Killing Games, because I think it would work well. But I think a focus like this that moves away from the question of adult content and makes it more of a larger artistic expression, free speech issue would perform really well if people turn heads and get people to care about this, because ultimately this is also what's at stake, right? This is not just about smut. This is about the general access to artwork. And that games fundamentally do tackle controversial and taboo subject material, regardless of whether the content involved is intended to titillate. And that gamers have a fundamental right, players, shoppers, customers have a fundamental right to access this content. So that's sort of my feeling about that. Organizer in the background, I don't want to be a leader either. I think I feel sometimes with these things, you're kind of thrust into a leader role because people don't want to lead. And I'm instead personally feel like I would rather throw out ideas for what people should organize and work towards. And it's up to other people to decide whether that's something they want to fight for or not. Maybe stop artistic censorship. I think something focused on games is really important here. Because I think the gaming world would especially need a sort of focus for this to work. Because gamers are very easily politically mobilized, but you need to speak to them. You need to talk their talk. That's why I actually think censoring would be really important here, because it is a very politically loaded topic. Don't let them sack your games. That actually goes so hard. Not my game story. Focus is needed. Whatever you do, tag me to share to my R circles. They seem interested. Games don't censor, but GDC. I actually am going to stress this is not something that I am going to do specifically. I think it would actually be really bad if I did this specifically. This is not something I'm organizing. This is actually something I think everyone here needs to be talking in their own circles about how they're going to organize around it. That's actually what I would say. I think everyone here should be poking around and asking folks like, hey, are you going to do something to fight this? That's more how I feel. Because I don't think it's good for me to be like sitting around doing this organizing stuff. Like I think that went really badly during the whole Kirsha thing. And I think that it's better for me to flag issues and let other people do like organizing. Yeah, exactly. So here's my advice about steps that can be taken. Here's my advice, starting points. And I really am just throwing this out there to the wind, hoping that just a wide assortment of people want to talk about this stuff. Yeah. No, I totally get Crossman. So I think, steps to be taken, right? Let me actually just completely we'll call them actionables. Like we're in a fucking business. General awareness. This is still not an issue that most people know. That MasterCard and Visa can just come in and decide. Whether that was a good burp. I think that was 2000, right? Or 1994, I forget. My birth year, 1994. Steppy, Anna gonna step on us? Oh my god. I said steps and you all are like little thirsty gremlins. Happy burp year, Anna. Why, thank you. It is my burp year, 1994. Can't believe we're already almost at 2000 burps. That's crazy. General awareness. A lot of people don't know that this is even a thing, that like MasterCard and Visa can come in and decide like, yeah, oh, I'm sorry, you wanted this video game? No. So I think general awareness is really important of these issues. I think as well, contacting government, politicians, ACLU, and prior org work. The ACLU has been fighting on this issue for a minute now in the realm of sex work. So there's also a lot of opportunity to reach out to places like the ACLU and say, hey, look, this is an issue we now face. And we think there's a real opportunity to mobilize on this issue finally. Can you do something to help us? Because we believe that we should have artistic free expression. We believe in the sanctity of free artistic expression, and you believe in the sanctity of sex workers' rights. So together we can really make change. Contacted government politicians as well, just to let government institutions and politicians know that this is an issue you care about, and also that they need to fucking pay attention to what's going on in some shape or form. It does matter. It does matter. Now, I'm not necessarily saying in the US that things might change, but in Europe, yes, absolutely. If anything, we've seen from Stop Killing Games that governments, politicians are starting to pay attention. They're starting to figure out that a lot of people are upset as consumers and they need to figure out something. I think maybe not in the US, but certainly in other regions, something could happen. Or at the bare minimum, there could be a larger public conversation about this issue. So absolutely, I think being involved in such a way and contacting people about this issue is really important. I think change can happen, even if it's more likely in some areas or regions than others. So general awareness, contacting government and politicians, working and contacting and making sure that other organizations doing work around this issue know. And I think, connecting with others over it. One of the most important things you can do is have like a network of people that share in this issue and want to see some sort of change happen. Whenever stuff like this happens, I hear from like content creators and VTubers. I hear from like game developers. I hear from other journalists. Everybody reaches out and they're like, hey, how are you feeling about this? What's going on? What do you think about this? We all kind of get in touch with each other and just kind of get a vibe check. And I think that's important here too. I think also in some cases you might have to consider, crossing the political lines a little bit. Sometimes when stuff happens and there's important organizing work to be done, sometimes there is a shared goal of like that right of center person, right? If like, you know, I hate Nazis and they hate Nazis, we're temporary allies, you know? The same things can happen there too. So just to point out as well that there's a really good opportunity to connect on a common shared good, common shared means, and sometimes you can find friends in unlikely places. 3 years younger than me, Anna? That's crazy. Baby, we need gamer senators in Congress. People will AOC plays League, so I need an ACLU pride flag. I love how it's just mask off at this point that USA is just very anti-worker and very anti-consumer. Actually true, though. It is biting them in the ass to an extent, thankfully. True. So yeah, I mean, that's really all I do have to say about that. I think pretty much anything else, I would have to wait on, like, you know, I would have to hear from what Lulz can say. I mean, like, I'm not going to argue against that. Anything else, I would have to hear back from an organization or see what other people are aiming to do, talk about things like that. But yeah, I mean, that's really my advice. I think it's really important to take opportunities like this and see them as opportunities to get the word out and to work with other people to try to make change happen. Change can happen, you know. But finding actionables that make sense and finding ways to try to, you know, even in very small ways, make something happen is super important. You know, you do have the power to do something. Even in our society where, especially for the Americans in the audience, you're often left very powerless. You do still have some steps you can take. And any steps to delay this stuff from hitting, you know, further censorship is really important. So that's my personal advice.